Manoj holds an engineering degree and majors in oil and gas manufacturing. Welcome, Manoj. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Kavita.
So we also have Rohit Kumar on the panel. Rohit Kumar is a pre-sales architect, AI Applications, IBM India. He has over 17 years of experience in advanced analytics, IoT, asset performance management. He has extensive experience in multiple industries like oil and gas, energy and utilities, and manufacturing. He holds an engineering degree in electrical and electronics and is an MBA in sales and marketing. Thank you, Rohit, for joining us.
Thanks, Coles.
So we have two Rohits on the panel. And so who wants to address whichever Rohit? You need to be very specific about it. So just a few housekeeping rules before we start. This session will be for an hour. And if you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box on your Zoom control panel. I'll bring them up to the panelists. We would want to make this session more interactive because we have, a lot of heads from the industry. So we would definitely want it to be more engaging and interactive. For now, we have unmuted all your microphones, but whoever is not speaking, we request you to keep your microphones on mute. So now I hand over to Rohit Pandey. Rohit, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Coles, and a very good evening to all of you. Before I start, I just hope that all of you are keeping safe. We all know we all living in a very different world from what it was a few months ago. Not just personally, but I think even professionally in our work and daily life. Now, given these unprecedented times, the intent and drive towards lowering costs, reducing downtime and improving efficiencies has only accelerated with the onset of COVID-19. I'm sure all of you agree with me there. Everywhere you look, business models are being challenged as are traditional ways of working. So why are we talking about APM now? Sorry, excuse me, Coles, can you put the charts up, please? So why are we talking about APM now? The reason really is that this is more pertinent than ever before, especially in asset-heavy industries like oil and gas, power, energy and utilities, where the impact of optimizing the life cycle of assets is huge. And it actually has a direct relationship to the bottom line of a company. Next slide, please, Manoj, if you're managing the slides, please.
Yep. Thank you. This is one, Rohit.
I just want to confirm if everyone can see the slides. I can't, but I know which slides they are. I just want to confirm if the rest can see the slides.
Yes, we can.
All right. Yes. Okay, so now let's take a look at some of the numbers. As you can see, as per a leading market research analysis company, and you would have heard of this, IDC, even though 50% of the companies are using some form of asset management and analytics, there's actually less than 10% that have an APM platform in place. So what does this tell us? It basically tells us that there's a huge opportunity for all of you, all our customers, all the companies, to really put technology to drastically improve your bottom line, especially in the area of asset performance management. Now, 2 years ago, IDC had also predicted as the second research statistics that's been put out by IDC, that 60% of the companies would have to rely on APM to reduce the downtime of their mission critical assets. Now, this was predicted 2 years ago. We are in a very different time right now, but I'm pretty certain that today, we'll have to wait for the next set of data points and research report to come out, but it really wouldn't be very different from what you're seeing here, that you still have 60% who would have to rely on APM. And what this really tells us is that it just reinforces our belief that there's a massive increase in mind share of companies that want to use APM to, they actually, a lot of companies that we speak to, they really want to use newer technologies. It's about APM, it's about asset, it's about predictability, it's about, using artificial intelligence to really see how they can improve efficiencies at their companies. This landscape is actually driving companies to look at new ways to automate different functions. I want to throw in another, you don't see it on the chart, but I want to throw in another leading research analyst called Markets and Markets. They did a little bit of research, and I think it was last year, where they came back and said predictive maintenance and machinery inspection is the dominant segment for infusing artificial intelligence, and especially in the oil and gas industry. Now, I know a lot of you are from the oil and gas industry, which is why I'm referring to the oil and gas specifically. But again, again, it comes out predictive maintenance, machinery is right up there. Of course, followed by others like quality control, production planning, field services, and so on. So what's our point of view on the journey taken by some of these companies around this area? Manoj, can you please change the slide?
Yep.
Thank you. So this is really what our view is. I mean, to begin with, companies need to start by digitizing their assets, and they really need to use their asset management solutions effectively for things like release of work orders, maintenance schedules, inventory management. I mean, this step, the very first step that you see at the bottom left corner, is really all about visibility and control of your assets. To me, this is the starting point of the journey, and most of the companies that we deal with are really in this stage at this point in time. The next two steps that you see in the asset lifecycle, I would call this the asset lifecycle maturity curve, is all about connecting equipment for real-time data, ingesting large amounts of data from your equipment to see anomalies, do condition monitoring, assess the health of the equipment, make some, with this, you can make a lot more informed decisions around maintenance and replacement activities. So the next two steps are really about that. Then comes the predict portion. Here we are really using pre-built analytical models to predict failures of equipment, failure dates, probability, anomaly detection, and then we get into prescriptive, right? Which is really where we infuse our cognitive capabilities into our product, where a technician or a reliability engineer will be essentially given a step-by-step detailed process of how to fix a problem, right? Taking in huge amounts of data from all over, whether it's the past reports and so on. So I'm gonna stop here, but let me kind of reinforce that what is really clear is that all asset-heavy companies need a very strong asset lifecycle management strategy to remain competitive and to face really the two key challenges that we are seeing in the industry today: aging workforce and aging assets. So with this, I'm actually going to hand it over back to you, Rohit, or to Manoj. Manoj, you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. Yeah. So see, to continue from where Rohit has discussed, right? So today's session, we will be concentrating more on smart asset management to start with. That lays the foundation of APM, correct? And then we will discuss about the roadmap and readiness analysis. Then why APM? Why do we need to think beyond a smarter asset management portfolio? And we'll discuss about a typical Maximo for APM suite, how that suite works, what are the benefits comes along with it. So I don't want to keep this session as a technology oriented. So more we'll discuss terminologies will be all technology agnostics, because oil and gas is one area where it's not Maximo is not the only player in asset management, right? So there are SAP PM solutions, Oracle solutions are all there in the market. So how this APM as a concept it should be integrated with the smarter asset management, we will look into that scenario. Then we'll see a typical APM strategy, which will help the organizations to create what are the key elements you should look, what are the key steps you should look into creating an APM strategy. Then we will see what are the key steps on implementing an APM solution as a starting point, which see if you talk about APM, right? APM is very equipment specific, right? So the strategies, the models, we call it as, are all equipment specific models. But there are certain steps which could be used as a starting point. We'll discuss and we will go through those steps. And then we'll talk about the reliability, like what is a typical day or what are the typical responsibilities of a reliability engineer to start with. And based on the learning that it's a cognitive landscape, right? So based on the learning that we collect as a part of the equipment operation cycle, the key activities for a reliability engineer will change. So that, keeping that in mind, we'll discuss what the typical day in life activity of a reliability engineer, and we'll take it forward from there. Okay, so I'll start with a EAM asset management landscape, right? So when we talk about EAM, EAM talks about asset management, yes, predominantly. Then it also talks about supply chain management integrated with asset management, work management, what are the work activities, work order, service requests you want to carry out as a part of your asset management activity. Health, safety, and risk, very key element of asset management, very closely related with asset management and work management. How permits are handled, how do you do lockout, tagouts, how each investigation of a problem is conducted, management of change. See, management of change is an underexplored area, right? Every new process coming into the stream should undergo a change management within the organization for its effect, for increase in its effectiveness. Correct? So we'll touch upon that. Then labor qualifications to ensure that the right person does the right job. Correct? And routes means related assets. Correct? And then then asset management also talks about the planning and scheduling of their day-to-day work. How do you prioritize your work? What is your production schedule? How you use your production priority to the work order priority? Thus, always a work carried out on a high priority asset always need not be the highest priority, right? So if you see a high priority compressor which is very critical for your process, and if that a cleaning work order is carried out on that compressor, it does not need to be high priority, correct? So work priority is different, asset priority is different. But when you look at a smarter asset management, it is integration between work priority and asset priority. So that will help the maintenance managers to maximize the use of your resources, correct? And again, eliminate the non-priority tasks being done by the critical resource or people who are qualified to do that, correct? Then we'll talk about finance control. The finance control is how the controlling finance, how are you spending on the asset? What are the maintenance activities which contribute to the expenditure on the asset, and how that is related to your overall depreciation or appreciation of the asset. Analytics, yes, IoT connectivity, analytics via Cognetics, Cognos. So Cognos, I just mentioned a tool. Any tool can help, does that purpose. Reporting predetermined reports, then ABC analysis. See this, if you see this landscape, right? This landscape is what EAM is about, right? And EAM is not a standalone component, correct? If you talk about a smarter EAM, the EAM is evolving from a standalone component of addressing the requirements of a maintenance manager to a integrated component facilitating data flow from multiple systems, right? So see, when you see about asset management always talks about historical data, the importance of historical data. From the year 2010 onwards, when maintenance managers started looking at it differently, creating a predictive model based on the historical data, the predictions were not accurate. Why? Because they were only considering the historical data for doing the predictions. Right now, with the emerging technologies of IoT, the devices getting connected into the asset management landscape, the data flow is more, and the relevant data flow is more, right? The data is of important only when the data is relevant, correct? So in this case, the relevant data flows into the asset management landscape is more. So the use of asset management in perspective of this data increases, correct? As I discussed earlier, SCADA systems, DCS systems, IRIS systems, Historian, OSIPI, this all holds your operational data, correct? So what is the data which is being used in your operational landscape, correct? So asset management becomes smarter when these data also integrate back into the asset management scheme of things, and decision is taken based on that. So how APM comes into picture? When the operational data is married with historical data, that is where the performance of any asset can be classified or can be arrived at, right? So if you see any asset in your landscape, it's not only your historical performance of the asset is a driving factor. Also, the operational aspect is also a driving factor, right? If an asset is keep on running at overload, the chance of failure is more. If the asset has a tendency of a infant mortality, then it could fail even right at the initial stage itself, right? There are some assets which are predominantly known for a bathtub curve for failure, correct? So those assets, we know that there are certain elements which will contribute to that failure. So how how these operational data can be carried forward or utilized in programming the strategy of that maintenance is where APM comes into picture. APM talks predominantly about 3 areas. Correct? One is asset condition, understanding and assessing the condition of an asset. O&M, which we discussed earlier, right? Operational and maintenance data, which any EAM solution can bring in. Business impact. What is the impact of that business process in an asset perspective? Correct. So if there is a loss, if an asset fails, what is a business loss because of that failure? So when you talk about reliability, the reliability of an asset or a reliability of a maintenance, it has all these components. Like it has a maintenance component, we call it as reliability maintenance. It has a procurement component also, because if asset is being procured from the right OEM, the reliability increases. It has a spare component, the spare procurement component. All these factors come together to form the APM landscape. Correct? So what are the benefits of APM? Real-time asset monitoring, that's a key area, because unless you monitor the asset in a real-time environment, your operational data cannot be used effectively. Right? So how do you do real-time monitoring of asset? It's a time chart, correct? So once you marry the actions or events into a time scale, that is where you can monitor the asset continuously, correct? So if there is for example, I'll give you an example, right? So an asset is showing an erratic behavior once in a while. So we can ignore that, because some of the maintenance engineers think that the erratic behavior, unless it is consistently showing up on my chart, it is not a warning for me. But there are occasions where one-time alert can also be a warning. So that is where the reliability engineer comes in, and he can strategize, and he can create a strategy based on the inputs or incoming data from these devices or these systems to come up with a performance plan. Right? And then increase in asset reliability. The APM, where it contributes is that it increases the reliability of the assets. The reliability means asset should not fail when it is required at the most for the production. Right? So that will definitely increase, because with APM, with continuous monitoring of the asset, with continuous warning messages monitoring, the assets become more reliable. Correct. And next point is regarding the data-based asset replacement planning. See, capital investment planning is very critical in oil and gas, correct? Because every industry will plan for future. Capital investment planning can be broadly classified into 2. Maybe a technology is contributing into an investment planning, or capacity is contributing to an investment planning. Another area is replacement planning, right? So when you track your maintenance of an asset, at one point of time, you'll realize that buying a new asset or replacing the existing asset is much more beneficial for the organization in the long run, rather than upkeeping this, right? So then that creates a base for your asset replacement planning. So then these APM systems give you a basis or a data-based analytics for arriving at that decision of when I need to replace it. Should I replace it next year, or maybe 2 years down the line? Correct? And another important factor I want to discuss about APM is people ignore APM, saying that, okay, I get a prediction, but that prediction is not effective to me because I'm getting prediction only on the last moment. Correct? So that is not correct, because many APM, that is because your model of APM is inaccurately designed. Right? So if you design your model accurately, you will configure your system so that you can get early warnings. Solution, there are solutions in the market which can almost provide 80 to 90%, predict 80 to 90% accurately on the performance or on the probability of failure of the assets. Correct? So model creation is very important, because the better the model, the higher probability of failure can be tracked. Okay, so I'll go to the next slide. See this, now we can talk about how a roadmap of APM should be designed. APM is not a starting point in asset management, right? And it's not the end point also. So any asset management landscape has to start with an asset management system study, right? What is a system study? System study means every critical assets and every business processes in your plant organization has to be mapped to these critical assets. Understanding of critical assets is very key. Because see, first of all, you should understand what are your critical assets to your organization. Right? Once you analyze and understood and fine-tuned or reached understanding of your critical assets. Then we will see what should be your to-be process. How will you maintain these critical assets? What are the key operational parameters of these assets? And if I say operational parameters, that if these operational parameters are met 100%, I'll say that this asset is 100% reliable. Right? So this study has to happen upfront. And this study will be integrated to your EAM implementation. Correct? So as a typical EAM implementation, we talk about modernizing maintenance, maximizing the asset life, standardizing the work management, optimizing workforce. These are the typical KPIs for any EAM implementation. Correct? So once we do this EAM implementation, or you already have an EAM implemented landscape, that is where you can start thinking about APM. So here you have data, you have an operational data for the past many years of operation. So the operational data component can be used for coming up with a model for APM, correct? And that model can be tested based on your historical data present in your system. So once these two gets integrated and once these 2 points fall in line, their asset performance management can be brought in. So what are the key elements of asset performance management? Continuous monitoring of asset monitoring. Yes, assets has to be monitored continuously. Asset health insight. So this is what we mentioned earlier by Rohit, right? How can we see that each asset can be given a score of its health? For example, if I'm saying that I have an asset and the health score of an asset of that particular asset is at 85, the probability of failure is only 15. Right? So it has then in the next 3 months, the probability of failure of that asset is 15% probability. So like this, you can prioritize, or you can prioritize your maintenance plan accordingly. And see, there is a saying in plant, I'm sure you might also heard about it, that unless you do a preventive maintenance on that equipment, and you are increasing the probability of failure because of your infant mortality curve, right? So don't touch a running equipment, let it run as long as it runs. Correct? So that is the key message from a reliability standpoint also. That don't, when we see that the asset health is good, all the parameters which should be addressed or which should be discussed or notified, noting or contributing factors for the asset health are well and safe and within the limits, don't do maintenance. So how that helps is deferring your maintenance plans, and this has 2 impacts. You're not disturbing the system, and you are ensuring that system is up and running as healthy as possible, right? So you're doing maintenance only when it is required to do a maintenance. And Health Insights framework provides the database solution for that. So it can give with the help of the data analytics, it can give a score for each and every critical equipment in your landscape. And based on that score, you can decide whether the maintenance has to be done or not. So what are the parameters? So that's a genuine question, right? How do you arrive at this score? Because there are so many parameters, contributing parameters, right? If you see the aging is a parameter. Aged assets have more probability of failure. Correct. Another parameter is the data coming in from devices, right? It gives me a vibration, you collect a vibration data, you take a horizontal vibration data, vertical vibration data. These are all contributing factors to a failure or to the score. So if the vibrations are within the limit, if the heat produced from the bearing are within the limit, in case of a rotating equipment, and if so, from an engineering standpoint, right, we need to decide and we need to design these contribution factors. And from the devices standpoint, the devices will bring these values to the system. And when these devices brings in values to the system, maybe using IoT powered smart maintenance mechanism, the system can come up with a accurate prediction of what is the health score of that equipment. Right? So we can go through some case studies later, but the point is that it's not a one-dimensional view. Right? It's always a 3-4 dimensional view, where you take multiple parameters into the system and create an algorithm based on these parameters. And the weightage of these parameters will vary also. Like for some assets, there may be a rotating asset, high-speed rotating asset. Correct? We know that the aging can be a greater contributing factor. So in the APM solution, we can even determine the weightage of these parameters. Right? We can put, okay, for this asset, 50% weightage should be given to aging. 20% weightage should be given to the vibration. 30% weightage should be given to the output pressure of the pressure of the fluid output. So like this, individual equipment or a class of equipment, we can create models, statistical models. And based on that statistical models, we can arrive at a score of the equipment, which will be deciding whether I need to do maintenance or not. Right? So going forward, when we see how does this impact a standard maintenance practice? This decreases the maintenance spend, obviously, because the repeated maintenance becomes less. And again, this will help us eliminate surprises, right? If the score is low, you know that the equipment is going to get failed in the very near future. So you can take remedial action. So the event of surprises can be eliminated. We'll move to the next step, maybe after implementing. So APM is not a one stop, right? You implement this solution, you have done APM. It's not like that. It's a continuous flow, right? So after getting the APM solutions in place, we go to a predictive maintenance inside. This is where the predictive analytics comes in and how effectively we are predicting a failure. As I discussed earlier, right? Prediction has a big problem. Prediction, from a maintenance manager's perspective, prediction, you cannot get a prediction saying that the equipment will fail tomorrow or in 3 days, correct? So you should need sufficient lead time for doing the maintenance of that equipment to avoid that breakdown. So all predictions should be in considerative of these lead time, or else the predictions are not useful. Correct? So APM models, especially from the Maximo APM solutions, are designed in a way that each and every smaller warnings can be captured, interpreted, and provide sufficient lead time for carrying out a maintenance activity. Right? So that is how a predictive model should work in the shop floor. It should help us execute the work rather than just tell me, okay, the equipment will fail. Correct? So again, the predictive maintenance also is a contributing factor for asset replacement planning, as I mentioned earlier. If the asset is predicted to give more failure in the future, then, and I see that the spend on that asset is more than replacing it, then I can put that asset, or I can prioritize that asset for my replacement planning. Same applies for prioritizing my repairs and replacements, right? So which you have 3 assets, all the 3 assets are same priority, and one of the asset scores is 25%, next asset is at 18%, so you know which asset has to address first. Correct? So see, this is a data-based analytical platform to help maintenance managers execute their day-to-day work efficiently. And as Rohit has mentioned, right, going for when you take the leap from a predictive maintenance insight, there comes your worker safety insights with the help of integration of machine learning, AI-powered tools like Technician Assist. I can see examples of a confined space. You have to execute a maintenance in a confined space, right? So the person goes there, execute maintenance, and with the help of wearable devices, he can talk to, or he can see videos of the exact task he should be carrying out in that confined space to make the maintenance very effective. Correct? So in reliability practice, the safe, effective maintenance execution pattern is also very detrimental, because unless the right craft does the work correctly, you cannot call that your maintenance program is reliable. Right? So, and these tools help in that direction. So see, we look at some analytics, right? How this, as Rohit has mentioned, right? How this audit or the market has evolved. 40% of scheduled maintenance costs are currently spent on asset with negligible effect on the uptime and failures. So see, what does this parameter show is that there is no relationship in most of the firms where you schedule a maintenance, you execute it, and it has no effect on your uptime. It again the equipment again fails. This always talks about the elements which I discussed earlier, right? How a reliable maintenance practice can contribute to an organization goal of reducing spend. Correct? So you are maybe overdoing maintenance, yes, could be, and not doing the maintenance at the right time. So the tools of APM, which we have discussed earlier, or the framework we discussed earlier, are in this direction. Correct? How to make these scheduled maintenance more effective. And the next point is regarding the maintenance activities carried out too frequently. This is every maintenance engineer's worry, that am I overdoing my maintenance? Is my bearing running to the rotations it is designed to run? Right? then most of these preventive maintenance are time-based preventive maintenance, correct? So we see that, okay, this pump or this compressor or this turbine has to run 150,000 rotations, and after that we will take it to maintenance, or it will run for 75,000 hours. So either it will be a time-based maintenance scenario, or it is a fixed frequency. Once in 6 months we'll do this maintenance. We call it as quarterly maintenance activity, half-yearly maintenance activity, right? So what this end up is, you might be replacing a spare which you are not required to replace at that point of time, right? Because we all know that this bearings and all those rotating parts have a certain life. So are we ensuring that we are maximizing the use or maximizing the life of these spares before we are replacing it? So the APM will give you a framework for that. You will have, because of your continuous monitoring in place, you need to replace it when it's actually required to replace it, right? So you can maximize the usage or maximize the life of the spares involved. Then maintenance efforts are ineffective, right? So this is another point, right? That we always feel that how much ever maintenance activities we do, the KPIs are not improving at the end of the year. I'm not able to reduce my budget at the end of the year. Correct. So these are common problems, which even in my earlier tenure as a maintenance engineer, I also felt the same. But the point is that the effective maintenance is very critical for this. Right? Are we doing effective maintenance? Are we doing the right task? Are we executing the right task as a part of maintenance? Right. So these things, this framework will help us do that. And another point is that when you find a failure, the corrective actions you are taking on the failure, right? Are we integrating that to the next maintenance plan? So APM does not have an independent existence. We see, okay, APM is something and you have implemented it, it should turn around magically, or it has a magic band. It is not like that. It's a framework which will help you to redesign your EAM practices, redesign your work management practices, right? You are getting inputs, you are getting feeds from the system based on which you can redesign your job plans, redesign your task list, redesign your quarterly maintenance plans, and make them more effective. So next time, before actually happening a problem occur, you are actually taking your corrective measures to eliminate that cost. Correct? So at this note, right, I'll leave to Rohit to tell us about some case studies which he has done in the as a part of the APM implementation. Rohit?
Yeah, thanks, Manoj. So I will discuss a couple of case studies. One is on the Woodside Energy, and then slightly I will touch upon also the Schlumberger case study. So Woodside Energy, it was an interesting case because this is not strictly on the predictive maintenance side. This is more on the prescriptive maintenance side, right? So Woodside, it's a oil and gas company based in Perth in Australia. It has several offshore petroleum and LNG production platforms. So they had a unique problem. They wanted to create a cognitive knowledge base for all their assets and engineering knowledge. So little bit of background. Woodside is a pretty old company. So over the period around 30 years, they collected a lot of information, a lot of knowledge. But the problem was all of them were buried in different reports, documents, and data silos. However, Woodside believed that by improving its employees' capability to tap into these engineering insights that lay hidden and dormant through different throughout different parts of the organization, they will be able to solve problems faster and reduce costs, and also drive greater engineering efficiencies. So what was the use case? The CEO of Woodside once famously said that they just completed a project of 15 billion Australian dollars, and through the project they identified around 8,000 documented lessons learned, right? But when asked to name 5 of those lessons after 2 years after the project, the executive team or the project team had very difficulty in even coming up with a couple of best practices that they learned. So this was the trigger point when they reached out to IBM, and the way we solved this problem was we employed Watson Assistant solution there. We call it Equipment Maintenance Assistant. So we put in approximately 33,000 technical documents from different projects into the Watson engine. So different kind of documents, and most of them unstructured data, PDF files, Word files of decision logs, engineering reviews, different reports, testing data, project management reports, associated correspondence, right? So all of these data points we ingested into this Watson Assist solution. So Watson Assist is basically a cognitive engine which can consume a lot of data, unstructured and structured data, and can make sense of it, right? And so once the model was trained, people could ask questions to it. So for example, one sample question can be, how do we design or select the compressors on a particular platform, right? So the exciting thing about this cognitive engine is this keeps on learning. So once this engine is taught, the Watson engine has been trained, it can be immediately used by all the other employees. So now, Woodside has been using the system for a couple of years now, and now they have deployed the system in multiple departments or projects wherein they are reaping the benefit. So the company is expected to drive down the employee cost by almost 10 million Australian dollars by improving productivity through faster access to and more intuitive analysis of the company's tribal knowledge. So this was an interesting use case wherein they made use of the cognitive capabilities and the way they are using it. So it's more on the prescriptive analytics side. Moving to the second case study, Schlumberger case study. So I will just be quick here in interest of time. Schlumberger has, so it's more of a partnership between IBM, Red Hat, and Schlumberger. So as you might be aware, Red Hat is an IBM company now. So Delphi is an Schlumberger, cognitive exploration and production platform in oil and gas. So they wanted some help from IBM on this platform, on this Delphi platform of Schlumberger. So the issue was they were facing some problems with the deployment of this solution, right? So there are few countries or few customers who wanted different deployment options. Like few customers wanted to be on-prem, few on hybrid, few on multi-cloud or poly-cloud. So IBM came up with a solution, IBM and Red Hat combined, and they proposed, which they are christening like Delphi Anywhere, which will be hosted on IBM Redshift, OpenShift, Red Hat OpenShift platform. And this solution can now be hosted anywhere, IBM Cloud or Google Cloud or AWS, Azure, Alibaba, on-prem, anywhere. So basically, IBM and Red Hat will containerize and virtualize these Delphi solution components, automate the deployments and to reduce the complexity. We shall also provide them few Watson services for building data lakes and analyze operations and drilling data. So this new hybrid cloud tech would be very helpful for oil companies overall, who strive to comply with different government regulations limiting where they can store their data, right? So all the IBM APM solutions are also now available on Red Hat OpenShift platform, which gives you greater flexibility of deployment, right? More infrastructure choices as well, wherein there are more data sovereignty needs or data residency constraints. So in these scenarios, this new age cloud native architecture will also help us. So these are a couple of examples, a few recent things that we have done or we are doing in this sector.
Thank you, Rohit. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Manoj.
That makes sense. So see, as we mentioned earlier, right, we have discussed upon many of these points, correct? So how, what are the key elements of APM and how an asset health insight help, how a predictive maintenance insight provides the right sort of data analytic platform for prediction. So we'll just quickly touch upon this Maximo APM suite, which is custom created for oil and gas and custom created for the requirements which I have discussed till now. The first element of APM suite is IBM Maximo Asset Monitor. Okay, let me again tell you one point, that this does not have anything to do with the EAM. This have independent existence, and this can get integrated with the SAP landscape, with your historian landscape, with OSI Pi landscape, with your IRIS solution, right? So that's how an asset monitor works. The asset monitor helps you to continuously monitor an asset, address all the data patterns coming in from an asset and plot it against a time chart, time series chart, and arrive at a decision, right? So asset monitor is very detailed solution, which has plugins for IoT devices, which has plugins for SCADA. Because see, I have seen many organizations, IoT is just a word for them, right? Especially for oil and gas. Many of these data points are already there in your SCADA solutions. How you interpret that data points, how you take that data points through your MES to the APM or to the asset monitor and transform that data to the way it has to be used for your decision-making process, right? So that's where asset monitor helps. And another key element in asset monitor, when you talk about IoT or when you talk about asset monitor, right? Another key point we should touch upon is edge analytics. See, these IoT devices and throw a lot of data to the system, and every data which is throwing from these IoT devices need not be brought into the system, right? So there should be a sieving mechanism in between. Only those data which make sense should be going into the system, or else the system will be flooded with the data and the decisions you are arriving at will not be conclusive. So edge analytics help us to do that, where the decision making or the sieving part by setting up the rules, which data actually makes sense in a maintenance manager's perspective will only go into the system. So as I mentioned earlier, right, when you look at the data, you should be sure that this is the right data that I am looking at, not at the entire data set coming in from devices. And edge computing or edge analytics will help you do that. And we have already touched upon asset health insights, where the scoring of asset is done. So Maximo Asset Health Insights provides a framework for all the points where I have discussed. It provides a framework for giving weightages for multiple contributing factors, changing these weightages based on asset performance, varying the weightages based on the asset classifications. All these things can be done using Asset Health Insight. Predictive maintenance insights that we discussed earlier, that gives you a platform for prediction of failures or prediction of a maintenance effectiveness based on the data, based on your historical data, as well as your operational data, right? And what Maximo APM suite helps here is it comes up with pre-configured models. There are around 8 to 10 models which are pre-configured, custom created for oil and gas solutions, which can be used as a plug and play, right? And then again, see, as I mentioned earlier, all these models has to be fine-tuned with respect to the asset, because models are specific to asset. The way a pump or a way a compressor or a turbine operates in one firm, one organization could be different. The same make could be operating under a different set of parameters in a different organization, right? So APM is more about understanding the equipment, understanding the contributing factors, and designing or creating a model, right? So we'll quickly touch upon the APM strategy. I know with the time we are running out of time. So as we all these points we discussed earlier, right? We are just trying to collate these points. But the moment you talk about production reliability, we have to talk about overall equipment effectiveness also, right? How effective this equipment is contributing to the overall production scheme of things. And that comes with production analysis also. What is the forecasted of production? So these elements are very important in COVID scenario, where because of demand forecast is less now, many organizations are running in low operational or low production capacity, right? So how that is contributing to your maintenance plan. If an assembly line or if an equipment is not running on its full capacity, the maintenance plan should be deferred, or maintenance plan should be changed based on this production analysis, correct? So the framework provides you to integrate your production plan or the forecast of production to your maintenance activity. That reliability of equipment, yes, bad actors, identifying the bad actors, doing a growth analysis of defect. What is a defect coming in? How are we analyzing your MTTR, MTTF, mean time to failure, mean time between failures, and how effective all these warning signals comes in, which could be utilized for the purpose. And again, the probability of failure, which we discussed earlier, right? What is a pattern for infant mortality failure? Is this equipment a candidate for infant mortality failure? If it is yes, your model should be tweaked to address that. Or are we getting random failures on this equipment? Or is it an early wear out failure? Is it bathtub models and all that? So all these models are configured in the solution, which could be utilized to predict a failure. Yeah. So I'll go to the strategy part again. See, what are the key benefits you will get out of implementing an APM solution, right? We discussed all these points. I'll also touch upon a pace factor or pace analysis, right? The key elements which come. So this is majorly because of an integration between a CFO and a maintenance manager, correct? Always there's a pressure on maintenance manager for reducing budget, and we have a framework to do that. Maximizing the return on assets, implementing action. What are the actions you should be taking? Implement APM. Then the real-time visibility to asset performance. We discussed earlier about continuous asset monitoring, right? Okay, what are the capabilities you need? You need to do frequent risk-based assessments and alignment of corporate performance and asset performance. What are the enablers? EAM. Yes, without EAM, APM does not make sense. So it has to work closely with EAM. The decisions which APM is providing you has to be integrated with EAM, and this decision has to flow back to EAM to make your maintenance practices better. Analytics. What are the analytic solutions available? Data available, and how these analytical models can provide you a better KPI, right? Dashboards, risk management, compliance management. I always heard I'm running a very smart company. All my processes are very smart, but if my compliance is low, then that does not make me smarter, right? So compliance of the process is very critical for making your asset management landscape smarter. Right? Spare management and RCM. So these are the key elements or key enablers which will help you after implementing APM. So reliability engineer, just go through a day in a life of a reliability engineer. See, every oil and gas organization should have a role for a reliability engineer. And what is the task of reliability engineer? We discussed so many different elements of asset management and APM, right? The critical asset monitoring, one of the key elements, he should be at least checking daily what is the status of my critical assets? What are the scores of my asset? Is there any asset deteriorating? Is any asset going into a high risk model for operation? He should be checking that. Asset scores, he should be checking asset scores for all the critical assets. Risk management, HAZOP analysis is very important, right, in today's world, because every operating procedure should be analyzed for any hazard or any which could happen if you follow that operating procedures, right? So the role of a reliability engineer in HAZOP analysis is very, very high. Same is with FEMA. Every failure or every probability of failure occurring in your organization has to be analyzed either through a fishbone diagram or through 8D analysis. It should be analyzed to see what is the effect of the failure, why it has failed, and what are the contributing factors, and what should be my corrective action, which I should have been taken to avoid these failures. The moment we change the mindset into the analysis mode, we can avoid repeated failures, right? So failure is not because failure can happen in today's world, but unless we learn from that failures, the failure will repeat, right? So we should avoid repeating that failures. And it is a reliability engineer's role in an organization to help the organization achieve this goal. Right? Asset lifecycle management. So how an asset flows, how an asset is created in the system to decommissioned to scrap, right? So that entire lifecycle management has to be done by a reliability engineer. He should be doing this asset decommissioning planning also, right? Asset scrap planning, asset replacement planning, which all these things we discussed earlier, right? So the reliability engineer holds the fort for executing all these elements of asset management. And he should be doing a data analysis. He should be doing a statistical process control, reliability modeling, prediction, fault tree analysis, VBUL analysis. Right? See, there are, why I mentioned VBUL analysis is because eliminating the not so important contributing factors is also very important, right? You see a failure, the failure is impacted by a weather change. Correct? So next time, so that cannot be used for a prediction. So you should eliminate these seasonal contributions to a failure, the so that the actual contributing factors of that failure can be used for any further prediction. So if you see a flow of events, right? So a maintenance reliability engineer should be reviewing the maintenance plan. This is what I discussed earlier. Based on the understanding or based on the decisions he is able to take from an APM model, he should be able to review the maintenance plan so that in the next cycle or the next time this plan is evoked, right? So the actions are better than and those actions address the corrective actions also, so that the failures can be eliminated. A reliability engineer should understand the critical assets, every critical asset's operational status, and how it is going to impact the production. He should be checking the asset monitors to see how the time series review of each alert coming in and how it is impacting the health score of the assets. Right? The reliability engineer should be doing a risk failure analysis we discussed earlier, prioritize work order trends. He should be the person who should be deferring the work orders also. He should, looking at the trends, he should be able to take a decision, should I do the maintenance today or can I do it tomorrow? So this is how the entire landscape can be transformed from a reliability perspective. Right? So solutions, yes, there are solutions, a lot of solutions available, but in the perspective of whatever points you have discussed today, Maximo solution for EAM, we have discussed about IBM Maximo Asset Monitor for continuous monitoring, asset health insights, and predictive maintenance insights, right? So see, we can, yes, if any of you need a demo of any of these solutions, you're welcome to call us. We can give you a detailed demo and showcase the value, what these solutions can bring for you in the long run. Yeah? So that's it from my side. And I'll hand it over to Coles to take it forward.
Yeah, thank you, Manoj. I mean, that is like a complete overview. I mean, right from the day in the life of a reliability engineer to how do you check the pulse of your health of your asset. We had almost a 360-degree overview of how to manage asset performance. So thank you, Manoj. Thank you, Rohit Kumar, and thank you, Rohit Pandey, for such an insightful session. Now we are open to questions. So we already have a couple of questions trickling in. So we've asked all of you to unmute. So if you have any questions, you could also verbally raise them. Since we already have a couple of questions, let me shoot out the questions. So to Rohit Kumar, the first one is for you.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most common challenges in implementing asset performance management?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, see, there are several, but I think one of them is with respect to data availability itself, right? So what you will find generally in the industry is, data points are available, but in different silos. So there might not be a common SCADA system or DCS system across your different plants or refinery units, wherein you can get all the data at one place. So that is one challenge with respect to data availability and being able to pick all of that data, bring all of that data in one platform. Because the other issue, a common issue which is there in the field is you will have a lot of different kind of protocols, right? So, but when you want to do an analysis, you will have to bring all of that data in one place, do the protocol conversion so that the models can understand that data. So that is one with respect to data availability and the protocol conversions. Other challenge I think is with respect to selection of use case itself, right? So what should be a good use case? Sometimes we have seen the selection of use case itself is not a very easy task. So there can be multiple strategies, right, to select a use case. It can be a very pointed use case. And even in case of pointed, you can have multiple options. For example, you might want to choose a machine which is most critical for you. So let's say in a refinery, I choose a compressor or a pump, right, which is very, very critical for the information. Other way of thinking can be that I will choose a system which currently I am not monitoring through my SCADA. So generally compressors, you will definitely monitor through a SCADA, right? So you might, let's say, want to choose a pressure safety valve or a steam trap kind of a problem, or fin fans, because generally these kind of machines are not monitored in SCADA system. That is another way of thinking. Second is an enterprise-wide approach, right? Which nowadays we are seeing, many organizations are moving towards that approach, wherein people are looking at platforms at an enterprise level and not only at pointed solutions. So, for example, we have seen a couple of RFPs in just last 2-3 months, wherein there is a demand for asset management platforms at an enterprise level, so that they can cover all of their assets. They can create a common data lake for all the time series data or the unstructured data, because there is a lot of unstructured data information as well present inside the factories. So how can they leverage all of that data to do a complete revamp, right, on the data analytics front for the assets? So these are few of the challenges and the approaches that we see in the market overall.
I think just to add to what Rohit said, I mean, and this is like Rohit's covered all the technical points anyway, but I think there's one key one which is kind of common across all technology infusions into companies, is the behavioral aspect. Right? There obviously needs to be a big cultural change when we are talking about an overall asset lifecycle strategy. So I think that's one. I mean, you can call it a challenge or you can call it a must for companies, but that's something that definitely needs to happen along with all the points that Rohit has just mentioned.
It's more of from an integration perspective, right? The maintenance department, the production department, finance department, all these should be working in complementing each other to arrive at a common goal, right? So when you talk about APM, it's an entire, again, it's a change. There's a change management involved, as we discussed earlier, and it has to be addressed for effective implementation of APM.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, all of you. Just a reminder to the audience, we are open to questions. So you might key in the questions in your question box, the Zoom control panel, on the Zoom control panel. We already have a couple of questions also. So this one is for Rohit Pandey. We did discuss this when we started. So what are the latest trends in APM? I mean, we have reports claiming that APM is becoming a critical, function than just being a maintenance, merely a maintenance aspect of asset management. So what are the latest trends and where are we heading forward?
Well, more than the latest trends, Kavita, more than the latest trends, I think APM is something that is now, I don't want to use the word catching on, but I think a lot more people are becoming aware of the benefits that APM can bring. Now, that's number one. Number two, it's not as if people have started jumping on the bandwagon. I think there's a lot more discussions happening at the enterprise level, but I still think it is fairly low. People recognize the fact that you need an overall APM strategy, and like I mentioned at the start, to improve your bottom lines, to reduce downtime and stuff like that. But having said that, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done in terms of taking an enterprise-wide approach to put this at the center of your strategy. Right now, I think it's still at the periphery, especially in India. What we're seeing is, while people are again jumping on, but I think right now we're still at the first step with most of our companies, which is really getting a asset management and overall asset management solution in place, the visibility around your assets before kind of moving up the maturity curve.
Okay. Thank you, Rohit. So Manoj, we have a question for you. Are APM solutions irrespective of EAM solutions?
No.
Say if I'm running a SAP as ERP solution, how can I get the benefit of APM?
Yeah, APM solutions work hand in hand with an EAM solution. Right? There is no point in having an APM solution without having an EAM solution. But having said that, right? But it is again technology agnostic, as we discussed earlier. The inputs to an APM solution is historical data and operational data, right? And devices, data from devices. So if any EAM solution, irrespective of Maximo, Oracle EAM or SAP EAM, can provide that platform for historical data, then APM can work, right? So that's the basis of APM. So transformation might be required. So there will be a transformation layer to transform that data sets to a readable format for a Maximo APM suite. But yes, once the transformation is over, then the historical data can be brought in and the models can read those data. Then APM will be as effective as working with any EAM solution. But again, having an APM solution, looking at the effectiveness of it or performance of equipment is one thing, and integrating the learnings or the decisions that we are taking based on this APM solution back into my maintenance plan, that is a critical part. Right? So APM solution coexists with an EAM solution, irrespective, and it is technology agnostic.
Okay. Thank you, Manoj. We just would like to reiterate. So audience here open to asking verbal questions. I mean, raising a question verbally. We've been getting a lot of questions on chat. But if anybody wants to verbally, ask a question, you could unmute yourself because you are allowed to talk now and, shoot a question to the panelists. So Manoj, we have another question. I already have an asset management solution in place. How can I start my asset analytics journey? Where do I start?
Yeah, so see, we have discussed that earlier. We have discussed in a chart earlier, right? So starting point of journey is having an asset management solution. So once you have that asset management solution, you need to think what are the different pillars for moving into an RCM based or RCM, reliability centered maintenance based solution, right? So key pillars are one, understanding my critical assets, understanding my production impact, understanding what are the contributing factors for performance of these critical assets, right? And the fourth important point is how the other reliability factors around the purchasing, procurement, inventory, the item reliability, all are contributing to the overall reliability of the maintenance. Right? Again, another key point is regarding the craft reliability. How reliable is your person doing the maintenance job, right? So reliability centered maintenance has to be looked at in all these perspectives. Then only you can say that RCM is reliable, and that's the journey to start with. If you want, the moment we move into an RCM solution, you need a solution for asset performance monitoring or asset performance management to complement you. And these solutions which we discussed here will help you or will assist you in the journey towards RCM.
Okay, thank you, Manoj. So any more questions, your audience, please be open to asking questions. You can unmute yourselves and ask, or you could also mail to Manoj, the email ID that you see on the deck here. So while we wait for questions from the audience, I mean, a few closing comments. Any closing comment from the panelists? I mean, I would like to start with Manoj, maybe.
Okay, so see, we have been discussing about the concepts of APM and how a technology can assist the concepts of APM, RCM, and all, right? So the stakeholder commitment is very key to this entire flow of events, right? So once the stakeholder is committed that this is what I want, this is my outcome which I'm looking for, these are my goals which I'm setting in front of you, then the technology can come in and address all the challenges and bring in or come up with a framework to help you arrive at that goal, right? So that is what technology can do, and that is what these frameworks can help you do.
Okay. So Rohit Kumar, would you like to?
Yeah, sure.
Few last words.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's important to start the journey because sooner the better, right? It's important to start the journey because everybody is catching up. Start the journey, pick some critical assets in your organization, maybe only 10 assets or 50 assets, that should be fine. Start collecting data, don't delete your data. Start recording all of that and start the analytics journey. That is the message.
Rohit, you started off, so be appropriate that you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Look, I'm, at the risk of repetition, I'm going to say the same thing, that the asset lifecycle strategy is extremely important. But and we've got a partner here, BCT, Bhavan Cybertech, who's got the skill sets. Somewhere in Manoj's presentation, they are used to doing system studies. What I would encourage to all the audience who's here, our customers who are here, is that start the journey. You want to start off by realizing what the impact could be. start with a system study. That's kind of a good way to start. And then kind of decide, whether you want to extend it enterprise-wide or not. But this is something that you would eventually have to do, whether it's now or sometime in the near future. Thanks, Coles.
Thank you.
So thanks to everyone here. I mean, we've been getting questions, but for want of time, we are closing the session. We are almost past 10 minutes past the closing time. So if any of you want us to do a demo, you could actually shoot a mail to Manoj, the email ID that you see here, or you could call one of us, one of our team members. We could set up a demo for you guys. So thank you again. Thanks again for attending the session. And this has been a very engaging session. Thanks to our panelists. Thanks for joining. We'll also be sending you the recording of the session. And we would also send you a short survey and the couple of case studies that Rohit Kumar discussed during the session. So thanks for joining. See you until next time.